Well, a very good morning to Namibia, wherever you might be joining us from, and welcome to this special broadcast. I think day 3 since we've, of course, officially started with the broadcast as we're running them in for today. My name is Ricardo Magosep, and I'll be with you up until 1 o'clock this afternoon. Well, coming up for today, like we mentioned earlier in the week, we are looking at thematic areas over the next 2 weeks to celebrate the life and times of the founding father, Dr. Shafishuna Nujoma. The announcement, of course, coming in from the current president, Dr. Nangolo on the 9th of February. That sad news announced to the nation and the rest of the world. Of course, the continent responding to that as well. Some of the first condolences coming in from organizations like the African Union as well as SADC and a number of sitting and former heads of state across the continent and the rest of the world. We, of course, know that Dr. Nujoma was an astute networker. He was, of course, also an astute negotiator there as well, spending much of the time in exile, galvanizing international support for the liberation struggle and for Namibia's independence. So the focus for today will be to look at that international fora. What was his position on foreign policy? How did he engage sitting heads of state? And, of course, Ghana support from the international community amongst and amidst all these accusations around SWAPO party being a terrorist organization in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we'll be speaking to quite a number of ambassadors throughout the course of the day. But that's, of course, Ambassador George Liswaniso, that went on his first foreign mission as the Secretary in New York from 1991 to 1994. We'll, of course, also speak to former ambassador to China, Ringo Abed, a very, very important trading partner for Namibia, as we reflect, of course, on his time in office during the Dr. Nujoma's stead in the office of the president. That and much more coming up. But first and foremost, we are very, very delighted to have one of the only 6 women that were part of the committee of 21 that drafted the Namibian constitution. That is, of course, Honorable Pendukeni Ivula Itana will also be joining us to reflect on the life and times and her time working together with the former heads of state. For that and much more, stay with us for this morning as we continue with our special broadcast celebrating the life and times of the founding father. Stay with us.
Situation life rendered, kujotashi pura shike. You be my hero, my commando. Itatukudingwe, kujotashi pura shike. Our hero. Sema shanu yometu temeno ndiro. Neno twaninge imbiro, atutange penda shasha twakanifa o hero. Good things never stay for long, but I'm sure your legacy will stay for long. Cause all you did for us, sacrificing your life. Tangita te fema so te kukandura. Situation life rendered, kujotashi pura shike. You be my hero, my commando. Itatukudingwe, kujotashi pura shike. Mandirire, mandikuzekwe wadi omoshire. Wetu thiri, eti wado wala se twanambi. Situation life rendered, kutotashi pura shike. You'll be my hero, my commando.
Welcome back. We continue to celebrate the life and times of the founding father of the Republic of Namibia. Of course, a lot of condolences coming in from the international community. You can go to our digital platforms to, of course, follow the narrative and see who's been sending what message of condolence to the Namibian nation as well as the family of the founding father. Now, the Sam Nujoma Foundation was established upon Dr. Sam Shafashuna Nujoma's retirement and registered in 2005 under the laws of the Republic of Namibia as a non-profit organization. The foundation was created to serve as a vehicle for advancing the values that Dr. Nujoma championed during his leadership, namely national unity, social justice, as well as sustainable development. Now, Penukeni Vulaitana, the vice chairperson of the Sam Nujoma Foundation, is now joining us in studio to reflect on the foundation as well as the legacy of Dr. Sam Nujoma as well. And of course, most importantly, the days before independence and working with him after independence in the first three cabinets as well. Very good morning to you, and thank you so much for making time out to join us this morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me.
Always a pleasure to talk to you. It's quite astonishing that the last time we actually sat down and had this conversation was exactly 12 months ago, in February, when we were, of course, reflecting on the life and times of the late Dr. Agikengo.
Indeed.
In terms of this, before you get into the news for this morning, how did the news reach you of the founding father's passing, and what were some of your initial, feelings and reactions to that news?
Yeah. Well, I don't live here in Windhoek, and for one or two reasons, I came over to attend to those issues. And I was informed that the founding was not feeling very well. And those who told me thought I would want to go and visit him. But I refrained because I did not just feel like visiting a person whom I have known for so many years is a vibrant person, energetic, lively, and to see him in a condition of helplessness. I resisted the temptation to visit him. And not long thereafter, somebody called me late in the morning. Not late in the morning, but early in the morning, around 1 o'clock. And immediately my phone rang. I knew something serious must have happened. And that was the news of his passing. It kept me awake the whole night. I tried to, do this or the other, just to make my mind get away from the thoughts. But that was not possible. So I kept awake, just like what they did with the late Comrade Hage. They called me again at 2 o'clock in the night. And from there on, I stayed awake until in the morning. So that's how I got the news.
I think I was thinking about, because we were supposed to have the conversation yesterday, and I was thinking to myself, what is it that it's such a long and rich history and such a long and rich relationship. Where does one start interrogating that relationship? And I think the most natural place really is just at the beginning. And I know last year when we spoke, you said that, some of these leaders you have not met before, you first hear about them through the radio, hear about these big personalities before you actually went into Exile and went to go meet them there as well. Take us to the very beginning. What were your initial, the first time, of course, hearing about the man Sam Nujoma, and then eventually that first encounter that you had with him?
You know, while probably South Africa thought they were demonizing the name Nujoma, they popularized him to the extent that as children, because I learned about his name in the early 60s. In the early 60s, I was just, not a toddler, but a child. We used to sing about Nujoma. Kana Uyoma, apparently coming back to the country with the pen and the paper on which to write. That was the song. And we, as a child, you imagine this human being as invisible, such a strong person whom the Boers, talked almost everywhere. Yeah, so one would fear to meet him, yet wanting also to see what kind of a human being he was. So his name became really popular to the extent that we even got to know his parents' names.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that had nothing to do with the parents, but since he became the news of almost every day, we got to know, even the village where he was from.
Many people also that one has spoken to says that because of that legend, the fact that he was so much spoken about on radio, obviously trying to be demonized on the other side by the South African government, that also sort of gave a bit of an encouragement for a lot of young Namibians that wanted to go into exile, to go and study and etc. Sort of as an inspiration and motivation that he's out there actually galvanizing the support for the struggle. Yeah,
in the early 60s to the late 60s, the opportunities to leave the country was not really there. But the popularity of SWAPO and the United Nations became a galvanizing issue. And then Nujoma, as you don't know that time whether Nujoma was now UN or was SWAPO or Nujoma and Kaunda. Kaunda was said Kaunda Kazambia, the Kaunda of Zambia. So now, as children, we didn't know whether Kaunda, Zambia, Nujoma, UN, FIFIO, not UN, FIFIO, and SWAPO. These were almost one and the same thing. And the mobilization by those who were politically aware, particularly the teachers and the unionists, now continue to mobilize, the public, and for us just to hate the system. Those who were in schools, like myself, I was in secondary school, and my question was always, I'm studying and what, from here. Should I now become the stooge of this regime, or what do I become?
So already by the end of high school, you were politically aware of the situation that you're finding yourselves in?
Oh, yes.
Based on this inspiration, based on all this information that is coming in?
Oh, yes, definitely. That was in the early 70s. We were already aware.
Take us through the first encounter. So when and where is the first time that you meet him?
Yeah, we left. I left the country in 1974, in July, and with my group we arrived in northern Zambia around that time, and that was towards August 26 celebration. From home, we didn't know what was the importance of August 26. And then when we went into the camps, our camps. You know, we were now told to organize for the 26th of August. And on the 26th of August, he came, the president of SWAPO, Nujoma. We were so excited. I'm telling you, some were even climbing on the trees just to to have a sight of him. Yeah. Nujoma. And he came there just an ordinary guy, just an ordinary gentleman. Yeah, who could speak to us in Oshiwambo and English, and we were so impressed. You know, because when you hear so much about a person, you get your imagination as to
you have your own version of who they are, in your mind.
Precisely. He was not, tall, well, just a middle-sized person. And I was expecting somebody tall and huge, some big figure. And big, and really frightening. No, just an ordinary, gentleman. He spoke to us and explained, the historical evolution of SWAPO and why the importance of August 26, and now encouraging us as youngsters what to do. Some must go to school. School in his vocabulary was always synonymous to the struggle. Yeah, education. We must get some of you who are coming from home to go to universities and learn, because Namibia is going to be independent. That vision of him, of Namibia becoming independent.
So it was unwavering. That is, he was convinced this independence is going to come.
Every time he spoke to us, that was always the vision, and you feel as if independence was just coming, if not next month, maybe it's next year. Yeah. So and then he later started telling us where we would be meeting next time. Next time we will be meeting at the outskirts of Windhoek, and then you feel really like it's just around the corner. Independence is just around the corner.
So that motivation, that inspiration was always ready.
Inspiration. And even when when I went to the UN Institute for Namibia, and he continued to come and lecture us. By the time he leaves, everybody would feel, no, what are we doing here? We must go to the front.
We are fired up.
We have fired up.
You had some responsibilities right before independence. Before we chat about, some of the first responsibilities after independence. Yeah. Obviously, as the party president, any instruction that is being carried out, particularly at the administrative level, has to come from him. Talk to us about those early days and some of those early responsibilities that you had now after union with the SWAPO and under his leadership.
Yeah, after union, I went to union after military training, and I thought, being trained now in public administration, I would still go back to the front. But then the Congress of the SWAPO Women's Council was coming shortly after the graduation. And without me knowing also, I went there because during the struggle, it was not really this lobby and the campaigns for positions. It was the meritocracy or the ability of somebody to carry out the task at hand. And when I went to that Congress, I hardly thought of being elected. But then others were just, talking among themselves. So the best person to lead us in this respect is that lady. And I was elected. we contested, we were 3, and I won, and I was the youngest. By then, I was in my 20s.
Sure.
Yeah, and so then that election really catapulted me into hardcore SWAPO leadership position, because as Secretary for Women's Council or secretaries of the wings automatically become members of the Central Committee. And the Central Committee used to be a very, very important decision-making body of the party.
Used to be.
Yes.
I think that one we'll park it for another day.
Yeah, let's park it for another day. It used to be a very, very important decision-making body, because it's where, the military council reports the activities that have to do with the armed struggle. That's why I'm saying used to be. You get all these reports and decision and strategies as to what is now next, at the international front, at diplomatic front, whatever front, it's there. And as such, you grow as time goes. To such an extent, really, that when we returned home, even if you had given me the position of being the president of SWAPO, I would have just saluted and, took it over. Yeah.
Well, come 1990, I think, I think there are 2 important things which I really wanted to highlight. But first, I can't get into the work in the administration without really talking about that point in time of the drafting of the Constitution. A couple of days ago on the 9th of... In fact, the announcement, it was also amazing that it really coincided with, on the actual day, the 9th of February, Constitution Day, the passing of founding that was announced by President Bumba. You were one of the 6 women that were on the committee of 21 on the drafting of the Constitution. Let's just reflect a little bit on the importance of this one, because for many people, if you look at it over the last 35 years, there's been a lot of stuff said about the Constitution. But it seems like it's one of those ideals that we all believe in as Namibians. If you look at it right now, how we deal and how we handle the Constitution, does it show what you would envision as the founders of this document and this belief, this conviction?
Well, in a way, it does. It has helped us to create institutions, processes, and whatever systems. And as it's said, the law or the Constitution it's a living thing. Yeah, the Constitution is a living document. Living in the sense that as the nation grows into maturity, there are certain aspects of it that requires the upgrading, the growth, at the same level with the nation as it also evolves. The young people, you people of today, do not have the same needs as us, the older generation. And therefore, you may have realized certain needs that you would think will take you into the future better than the way we drafted it. Because the law is to facilitate the growth, not to constrain. Yeah, it's to constrain where it's necessary. For example, in criminal matters, you can say it must constrain. But growth, it must allow society to grow and facilitate that things are made smoother other than to restrict. that way I feel that we cannot just look at the Constitution as a document cast in stone. You can't.
So it must be a living document that evolves as society changes.
As society changes. Yeah.
One of the things, if one looks at it, in terms of the overall understanding, I was reading extracts of pages that were put down by Dr. Kengob around the thinking and the Committee of 21's thinking around the draft, that really the whole idea around the Constitution was to limit state power to a certain extent. One of the main debates, of course, were whether we should have a ceremonial president versus whether we should have an executive president. But you chose an executive president, but that executive power that the president and the cabinet have also has constraints or limitations built into it. Talk to us a little bit around that thinking of the separation of powers and making sure that state power in the Constitution is limited so that there is no abuse or a chance of a dictatorship.
Our thinking was based on the prevailing political and experiential situation we come from. As you know, it was not just SWAPO, it was all other political parties that gained seats on the Constituent Assembly. There was those fears in all of us, as to whether we would be inheriting a system like that of racist South Africa, or others were thinking that maybe we will come with an autocratic kind of system like elsewhere in the world, and therefore the caution that while we should have probably an executive president, there must be checks and balances, built in so that we do not create a situation like the ones we want to get out of. And therefore we created all those
checks and balances. Yeah.
Checks and balances to facilitate that in as much that we have the executive president, that president should not have powers to decree, for example, other than the parliament or other institutions to check on these powers, because human beings are just human beings. Yeah.
But one of the things, of course, the powers that it used was to appoint you as the Deputy Minister for Wildlife, Conservation and Tourism in the 1990s. So you were part of that first group that really formed the administration under the president. How did that news come to you? And I know obviously you were still quite young at that stage as well, and many say that one of President Nujoma's strong leadership skills or attributes was that he was able to spot talent and entrust young people with huge responsibilities. Talk to me about that entrance into, the administration as Deputy Minister in 1990.
Yeah, it did not get me by surprise in a way, because my expertise and my ability to argue and do things was really found out during the negotiations for the Constitution. As you said, we were just 21 members, and I was the only woman, actually, amongst these men. And I was able to stand up for issues where others felt probably the SWAPO men were not men enough to really discipline me. And when we went into the Constituent Assembly generally to debate general issues, I was on MP on my own, despite my young age, and therefore my ability was not only realized that time. Actually, from the liberation struggle itself, I was identified as one of the able female youngsters.
So where did that confidence come from, though, to stand against all of these men? Because you always seem to be, you know, the only women that's sitting amongst a group of strong, powerful men, whether it was in Central Committee, whether it was at the Constituent Assembly, and of course in Cabinet when you were appointed as Minister of Youth.
Yeah, I should really go back to my upbringing. Yeah, we are born so many, 10 in number, and only 3 men. All of us were ladies. But then I grew up without a man in front of me, a boy in front of me. Although the sibling I come after was a lady, and then she passed on. Then there was a gentleman in front, but that gentleman grew up with my paternal grandmother. Oh. So I grew up like a boy at home.
So you had to be independent?
I would look after the cattle, I would milk, I would do everything, and my father relied on me, you know, really, just like a boy in the home. And and then because of the distance to schooling, I was then given to other families also to take care of me while going to school. And when you grow up with people who are not your biological parents, you bear difficulties, yeah, and you rely so much on your mind, your strength, yourself, to be able to overcome some of the difficulties.
Challenges.
Yeah.
I want to turn our attention a little bit to the Founding Fathers' leadership style. In Cabinet, of course, your first substantive post was as the Minister of Youth and Sport from 1991 to 1996. And one of the biggest challenges for a lot of the liberation movements is now you have to come in now from being a commander to running a political administration and a government. Reflect a little bit on his leadership style and that transformation, I think, especially during those first years from 1991 to 1996.
Yeah, you know, I was given that ministry. It used to be a directorate from the Ministry of Education, and then it was split to become a ministry. And when I was assigned that portfolio, minister of a ministry, with no ministry, the structure.
No building.
No building, no nothing.
So you had to start up setting up the directorates.
I started from the scratch. I remember going to the Ministry of Works, because we were told Ministry of Works is the housing for all the government buildings. I went to Works and made that request. I had a permanent secretary, and we were going around just following one another, you know, because we did not.
So it's just the two of you that are the ministry now.
Two of us, the two of us, yeah. So then I was given a lady. She's originally from Ethiopia. She's an engineer, and apparently there was a building where one of the shops used to be. And then we went there. It was just an empty building. Then with her, we started, you know, directing. The office of the minister must be somewhere here, you know, just to partition, you know, that building. And we got our housing there. And then the structure now. The two directorates, we must come up with them, because it's now Ministry of Youth and Sport.
Yeah.
Directorate of Youth and Directorate of Sport. And then the recruitment of the personnel, the two directors. Initially, the Director of Sport was a lady, and the Director of Youth was a gentleman. And then in the middle, we swapped them, because the man was more aligned with sport than, and we thought the lady would deal much more with youth matters.
How was the leadership style from his side during the time that you're now setting this up, and what were some of the guiding principles that he shared, of course, to make sure that this thing is a success?
You are not giving directives. You are giving an assignment. Yeah, you must go and do it. How you do it?
That's up to you.
It's up to you. But he's expecting reports. Yeah, you must report how successful or your failure, in either cabinet, or he calls you one-on-one to, just to report. What are your difficulties?
What is your fondest memory of the founding father? Perhaps something that we don't know. Your most fond memory of him.
Yeah, the founding father was very skillful in consultation. When there are very heavy issues, he does not just bring them in the open like that. He would first start negotiating behind the scene, one-on-one. When you see, for example, a call very early in the morning on a day of cabinet, then you know
there's a negotiation coming up.
There is a negotiation for something he wants to push through, and he wants support for that. And therefore, cabinet was not controversial in a
So it was very consultative.
Very consultative. Very consultative. Yeah.
That in terms of the legacy, much has been said, much is what we know about him. But for you personally, how do you want us to remember him as a Namibian nation? What would be the best way to celebrate his legacy?
Well, Nujoma was first and foremost a visionary person. Really, of things he kept telling us and how they materialized afterwards. It just surprises you. And if we had followed the Vision 2030, precisely as it was put, I think by now we would be somewhere in the developmental stage of our country. And he loved education. He loved children. Every time you may remember that he used to tell us as adults to eat once a day, for the children to eat 3 times a day.
3 times a day.
Yeah, because the children need to grow up, they need to be strong, they need to get educated, and yeah.
I just want to close off with this one. I think quite an important one. We know the moniker "One Namibia, One Nation" was what he always preached. We used to get so excited to go to the stadium so that we can just hear him give that message. But it seems like, from different quarters, depending where you're standing from, that unity is not looking as strong as it used to be.
Yeah.
How do we go back to that One Namibia, One Nation moniker and start living that in our day-to-day interactions with each other as Namibians?
I think we should take up the mantle. The generation that have witnessed what Nujoma was all about. There are so much that we can really cling to and say, we are going, at personal level, I'm going to pursue this drive, And then also the leadership of the country to go back to the roots and start picking up those slogans that made us to overcome many of the challenges that could have really put us astray at independence. But because of those policies, we are able to be here. And the world is envying us. Namibia is a peaceful country. Imagine what happened in Mozambique after the the fiasco of their election.
elections,
Yeah, they banned everything. They killed each other. But here, nothing of that sort happened. And the world is
So you
looking
still
at us.
believe in that,
Yes.
in that mantra, and that we can push forward as a
We
country?
can push forward as a country, provided we stick to our constitution, our policies, and the way we have been looking at each other. One Namibia, one nation. That slogan should not die. It should not die.
Mepenikeni, thank you so much for making time out to join us and for this conversation. I know you and I can go on and on, but I have to let you go now. Thank you
You're
so much.
most welcome. Thank you.
There we have it, Mepenikeni Vulaitanas, just reflecting a little bit on her time working with the founding father, of course, as secretary for SWAPO Women before independence, and of course working on the Constituent Assembly as one of the drafters, one of six, only 6 women on the Committee of 21 that drafted the Namibian Constitution, and of course also reflecting on a time in cabinet immediately after independence with immense responsibility of setting up a new Ministry of Youth and Sport from scratch. We'll continue now to reflect on Nujoma, the internationalist, the great negotiator, when we come back as we have reflections with former ambassadors and diplomatic heads of missions after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special broadcast as we continue to celebrate the life and times of the founding father, of course, focusing on his foreign policy and him being an astute international negotiator. As we continue to chat with some of our former ambassadors, Dalishe Kamati, Namibia's former ambassador to Zimbabwe, now joins us this morning virtually. A very good morning to you, Ambassador. Thank you so much for making time out to be with us today. Well, okay, it seems like we might have lost him. We're going to try to get him back online, but let's quickly go for a short visit to the marketplace. Welcome back. Let's see whether Ambassador Kamati is joining us on the line right now. Very good morning to you, Ambassador.
Yes, morning. How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Much for making time out to join us this morning. Just to start off, can you just share with us how did the news of the passing of the founding father reach you, and what were some of your initial reactions to this news?
Well, I was deep in the bush in the Kavango West, and when I got the news, I was shocked. I couldn't believe it, but it took me some time to settle down. And later, of course, I understood that it had to happen because it happens to everyone, and our commander, our leader, has been with us for quite a long time. I realized that it was time for him maybe to leave us, but it was, we think, although he was old enough, we think he should have lived with us more and more so that we take on his knowledge, his wise advices, and so on and so forth.
In terms of the relationship with the founding, just talk to us a little bit about the first times you've heard about him and the time in the struggle, and what your first encounter was the first time you've met him.
The first encounter, which period?
Say the first time that you met him, Nujoma, as the man.
Well, the first time I met him is when I went into exile in 1974. And I was very impressed to meet him because I thought it was going to be difficult to see him physically in the country before we left the country. We have been discussing about him. The man, we thought he was a giant, but he was a giant indeed in his ideas, revolutionary spirit. He was a great giant. But I thought he was a big, big man I could not even shake a hand with.
In terms of that, of course, the first chances of course, meeting somebody like that, you were saying right now that you were not even sure whether you're going to shake his hand. What can you tell us about his character and your impressions of him?
Well, when I met him and I get more and more acquainted with him, I found out that it's not the man we used to hear through the South African propaganda here in the country, that he was like a devil and so on. But we found Sam Nujoma, the man who likes people. He is laughing with everybody, especially he liked the young people. And he was always among the people. He would even invite us to his house in Lusaka. By then, we were living in a camp, in a farm outside Lusaka. So we found out that he is a friendly man, very friendly, and we could not understand why the South African government could make such a propaganda to make a devil out of a peaceful man.
Ambassador, just take us through your first assignment from the president. What was your first assignment from him, and what were some of those instructions?
Well, my first assignment was to Britain, 1992. As Deputy High Commissioner, but I didn't stay longer there. I was assigned to India to open our embassy, our High Commission there. So 93, I went to India and I opened our mission. I stayed on until June 95, when I finished my work there, and I came back to headquarters. And then the assignment the next assignment was as ambassador to Zimbabwe. That was 96. That was the most challenging assignment because Zimbabwe was in a period of trying to change the situation, the colonial situation, by reallocating the land and giving the land to the people, and it became a hot potato. The West didn't want that to happen, and Zimbabwe was put under sanctions, and the situation was difficult. But to work with Sam Nujoma, Dr. Nujoma, in situations like that is when you appreciate him more. He is always with you, although you are working under the Minister of Foreign Affairs. He will pick up a phone and call you to understand what is happening and to give you advice and fresh instructions. So it was very good, although the situation was difficult. It was very good to work with our president, Dr. Nujoma, because he was a man hands-on the situation. He will always call you, even when you come to headquarters to report to the ministry. He himself wants you to go to State House to tell him the full story of the situation. So it is easy, even if the situation is difficult. Under Sam Nujoma, you will find it easy to operate.
The guidance. What is your most fondest memory with the founding father?
Well, I have different situations which are equally important. I worked with him as one of the senior commanders, as chief political commissar of the People's Liberation Army of Namibia. And that time I was working closely with him because I'm the one responsible to talk to the soldiers when they go into the combat. So that is the time I came very, very close with him, working together, discussing about the war situation and so on, and giving you instructions and advice and command how to operate and operate effectively. But then, forming the government, I was permanent secretary. I was the first permanent secretary for Home Affairs. Again, he could avoid even talking to the minister and call me even at night to find out what is happening. The police really on the situation or not. So you become very, very close with a man who is a big person you are supposed to be far from, but Sam Nujoma will bring you closer to him. So all those times I became very close to him, and I have fond memories about him at all stages where I operated.
Well, thank you so much, Ambassador, for making time out to talk to us this morning. I'm pretty sure we're still going to have more conversations as we reflect on the life and times of the founding father. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's, of course, Ambassador Ndali Sheikh Amati did stints, of course, in the United Kingdom, the first one in the early 90s, of course, followed by a number of other postings, including establishing the High Commission of India, and then, of course, a stint in Zimbabwe as well. Stay with us as we continue with more after the break.
Good morning and welcome to your news highlights here on NBC. I am Raymond Kukutu. Thank you so much for tuning in. Pastor Jackie Fredericks of the Alkren Hosiana parish in Walvisbaai has emphasized the significant role that churches have played in shaping political leaders in Namibia. Fredericks highlighted the influence of the late founding President Nujoma, who as a young boy in Walvisbaai discovered his political voice within the church. The church, Fredericks explained, became an important platform for spreading ideas of resistance and liberation during the apartheid era, when the South African government tightly controlled the flow of information.
The church have very, very, very highly contributed in shaping our leaders. Through that, it has given the guidance of spiritual life of these leaders a sense to see the injustice that was done to our people. And the church was basically used to advocate, to disseminate information and sensitize people about their rights and about the injustices that was done to them. That's how the church directly, indirectly shaped the lives of our leaders. And it was the church that was used to drive this agenda of the injustices, and as they were the voice of the voiceless.
Where late that the Shafishuna have ended, we have to take it up for the new generation to come, to know that this independence we are enjoying was not received on silver platter. Blood has shed. Our fathers who were in exile, they spent all of the youth outside there fighting for this country. And I hope that as he was uniting everybody in this country, nobody must feel that he is not part of this beautiful country of us. Let's build on it. Let's keep the new generation, let the history be taught in the schools so that we can emulate on what they have done. This legacy must continue. And the role of the church must also be vocal, as it was here in these churches where the message of independence was portrayed and it was said and it was preached. I remember yesterday when I seen that radio in Angola, Lorenzo March, where that time we did not have TVs. We could only hear in the radio how our founding father was speaking. The Jackson Kaoya music was heard over those radios that is now in the 50s, the 60s. And it is there where we want the history must be taught. Our children must know where we come from and where we are heading to.
Ohorongo Cement, in partnership with Support ULM-EV, has donated $2 million worth of medical equipment to the Ministry of Health and Social Services. The donated items include beds, mattresses, walkers, crutches, wheelchairs, drilling equipment, and orthopedic equipment, among others. Receiving the donation, Deputy Minister of Health and Social Services says the equipment are set to transform the way healthcare is provided, ensuring that health officials are equipped to offer the highest quality of service to local communities.
Today's donation by Dr. Schneider, Support ULM-EV, and Ohorongo Cement is a testament to the power of coordinated efforts in achieving tangible improvements in our health system. The provision of high-quality medical equipment empowers our devoted health workers, enhancing their capability to deliver care that meets the needs of every patient. It will undoubtedly improve patient experiences and outcomes, echoing the standards of healthcare we aspire to uphold across our nation.
With the help of Orongo's amended report, we will improve the situation also in other state hospitals with more equipment during surgery for drilling holes in bone osteosynthesis. I would like to thank again all of the people who made this donation possible, and I'm looking forward to meeting you again at a similar occasion with more surgical equipment, maybe not only for Kotutura, maybe also for Windhoek, maybe also for Keetmanshoop, and all the other hospitals who are needing that.
In efforts to enhance agricultural productivity and resilience, the Food and Agriculture Organization has sponsored a benchmarking visit between the Kavango West and Omsati regions. The benchmark activities will strengthen agricultural knowledge on cooperative farming and market access between farmers from the two regions. In a media statement, FAO says the governor of Kavango West, Sirkau Siku, and her delegation made a visit as selected horticultural farmers of Olushanja in Omsati region. This is in line with the recommendations of the Kavango West Agriculture Conference that took place in November 2024 to facilitate knowledge sharing and expose farmers to best practices in horticulture. The delegation was exposed to techniques, cooperative management, and market access strategies. Beyond our borders, all 80 passengers and crew have survived a crash landing in Canada. Authorities at Toronto Pearson Airport say at least 18 people were injured when the jet flipped on landing in windy and icy conditions. Al Jazeera's Haiti Joe Castro reports from Washington, D.C.
Everything, drop it! Come on!
Passengers aboard Delta Flight 4819 documented their own escape from their belly-up plane.
Holy f***.
We just landed. Our plane crashed. It's upside down.
The Bombardier CRJ-900 had taken off from Minneapolis before it crash-landed at the Toronto Pearson International Airport on Monday afternoon. All 76 passengers and 4 crew members evacuated to safety. The plane was operated by Delta's subsidiary Endeavour Air. Treacherous weather, including 60 kilometers per hour winds, may have been a factor in the crash.
We are very grateful that there was no loss of life and relatively minor injuries. We are very focused on the care and the concern and the passengers and the crew, some of whom have already been reunified with their friends and their families.
It was a very different story less than 3 weeks ago when 67 people died after an American Airlines jet and a Black Hawk helicopter collided near Washington, D.C.'s Ronald Reagan Airport. The helicopter had been flying higher than authorized. And just 2 days later, another fatal plane crash in Philadelphia. All 6 people aboard a medical jet died when it fell to the ground shortly after takeoff, killing another person on the ground. The series of incidents has alarmed the North American aviation industry. The Canadian Transportation Safety Board is leading the investigation in Toronto.
The Department of International Relations has confirmed that the United States would be represented at the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting this week, despite the absence of U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The department also confirmed that the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent would attend the G20 Finance Ministers meeting in Cape Town next week. Here's Al Jazeera.
After accusing South Africa of anti-Americanism, Rubio said he would not attend the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting in Johannesburg. But SABC News understands that the United States would be represented at a lower level. DIRCO has also confirmed the attendance of U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent when G20 finance ministers and central bank governors convene in the mother city from February 26th, while we await further confirmation from officials in Washington. U.S. President Donald Trump will assume the presidency of the group once South Africa's term expires at the end of November. Sherwin Briceby's SABC News, New York.
That concludes the news highlights at this hour. Stay tuned for the special broadcast in memory of the founding president.
mutima wanje bepinduka mulombosu mutima wanje bepinduka shashitwa shaye biliwa bakwetu obaduberwa kukwatewa okukakurana omake bakwetu obaduberwa obaduberwa shashitwa shaye biliwa bakwetu obaduberwa kukwatewa okukakurana omake bakwetu obaduberwa obaduberwa mutima wanje petangowara orita utano ondiri mutima wanje bepinduka mulombosu mutima wanje bepinduka mutima wanje petangowara orita utano ondiri mutima wanje bepinduka mulombosu 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 kukwatewa okukakurana tabu endelele so jafiki talimatuka yetimbo onena ahawe hangura ndingili kambika ongashinge tali angefunja tali endelele ezokalina onjolola tali kuzapo akulunduna nona ayambanosho ohepele longe queda onjila yoye ekupitho ukamone iyo ndingo ilongekita wonkato keke okeso yukita yeso wa talela mokukalakoye onjela omwenyongo waruke tali angefunja tali endelele isokalina onjolola tali kuzapo po akuluntu nanona bayambano sho ohepele
longe kida onjila yoye
ekupizo ukamone
kalawa
tonata ontenya nusiku
zamumo
posidulunde auhe
onjila
yoye yokuzamuyunimbo longe kida manga unezimbo tari yange funja tari endelele esokalina onjolola tari kuzapo akuluntuna nona ayambanosho ohepele
longe kida onjila yoye
ekupizo ukamoni
koe konja
ano wana umbanda washa
oye wo
zaro nyati omeitaro
ompango
uitigindinde aluhe kulikawo komauzo ageke tari yange funja tari endelele esokalina onjolola tari kuzapo akuluntuna nona ayambanosho ohepele
longe kida onjila yoye
ekupizo ukamone Oma Jesus ngoye kumeketu opo uli putse aruke omenyanyu nomudigu wetu ongoye totu yambidikanga Gele tuli momaudigu etu Karapuse kapupareka Kekeleka una antu yoye Ongo ya wike ekwaso jetu Momaldigu molukodilwetu Tonatiza omekogetu Tukumbone nkene uliputse Ongo ya wike tukwinekele Tukoleka omeitano jetu Tupongondo tukulongele Mangatuno mwenyo mpake vindi Ongoye utu yambididonga
Very good morning to you once more, and welcome to this special tribute broadcast coming to you right here on the NBC as we continue to pay tribute, as we continue to pay homage to, that is, the founding father, the founding president, pardon me, and father of the Namibian nation, Dr. Sam Nujoma, who of course passed away on the 8th of February 2025 and will be laid to rest, that is, on the 1st of March 2025. Of course, over the past week and a half, we've been bringing you updates, engaging several pockets of society with regards to the legacy of the founding president, of course, his contributions to the country from various perspectives, from various sectors, etc. And we continue to do so today as we continue to unpack all things related to founding president Dr. Sam Shafishuna Nujoma. Now, the legacy of founding president Nujoma remains deeply embedded in the country's development. One of his lasting contributions was his commitment to education, ensuring that young Namibians were sent abroad for studies to build a skilled and knowledgeable workforce for an independent Namibia. Today, many of those beneficiaries occupy key leadership positions, serving as prime ministers, executive directors, and other portfolios in high-ranking roles. And one of those such students who were sent abroad to go and, of course, pursue education and make sure that we come back and build this country is none other than Dr. Martha Shikongo Nambambi, who's one of those individuals that were personally sent abroad by Dr. Nujoma, and she's here this morning to share her experiences with us, her reflections on his leadership, and how his vision shaped their careers and the country's development. Dr. Shikongo Nambambi, a very good morning to you, and welcome to this special tribute program.
Yes, thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
I think a good place to start would be, learning your own personal story. And I was doing that a bit off air now, and I'm simply amazed at, the bravery that many of your generation, showed during those turbulent times in Namibia. Let's take us back to when you went into exile. What was the situation like here in the country, and what inspired you as a 14-year-old to go out there and pursue the liberation of this country?
Inside the country, number one, we had limited access to education. Educational programs were based on Bantu education. And we were not allowed to venture and to study all fields that we wanted to study. Because the Bantu education was designed in such a way that we were trained to become servants of the white minority. Yep. So when this opportunity came, we took it up. When we were informed that the way to Zambia to Zambia was open, we could go. So we took it up so that we could further our education. Yeah. And
please go ahead, yes.
Yeah. And there were constant harassments and beatings here in the country, so it was not fun. Imprisonments of students because they were protesting against the Bantu education.
Yes.
So we knew our days here were numbered as far as education was concerned.
Very much. Of course, the name Sam Nujoma resonated in many households, both within Namibia and abroad, to those who have already been in exile, the likes of himself, the likes of Dr. Gengob, who had earlier gone into exile through Botswana, etc. Talk to us about the name Sam Nujoma at that point in time. As a 14-year-old young girl here in Namibia who's facing oppression here in the country, facing apartheid, facing a discriminatory education system. What did the name Sam Nujoma mean to you at that point in time?
Oh, Sam Nujoma, to us, and to me personally, it was like a myth. You know, I heard it in songs.
Yeah.
They used to sing about him.
That he could fly.
That he could fly.
Yeah.
He fought using a handkerchief. Yeah. He could stand in the road, and when a car, approaches, then he turns into something like a basket. The car can run over that basket, but it will never get damaged. Yeah. So that's how we are told about Sam Nujoma. Yeah, but in any way, we viewed him as a strong person who stood against this, colonial, the white
oppressive
regime.
Forces, yes.
The forces.
Yes.
When you look at their cars, you look at the soldiers, you get frightened. And we just wondered how it didn't frighten him. Yeah. He was ready to face them and to challenge them militarily. Because the time we left, the Omgulu Wambashe had already happened.
Yes.
And coming from an Umsati region, you see, our house was very close to where the battle took place. Yeah.
So that inspired you all the more.
It inspired me all the more.
Yes.
But again, our firstborn left this country in 1965, before I started school. So before I started school, when he left, he said he went to Tanganyika and he went to fight for the country. He went to join Sam Nujoma.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you ever find him in exile?
Yeah, I saw him a couple of, actually once. Yeah. I saw him once, I met him once, because he was most of the time at the front line.
Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. A number of people used to call him a rabbit, because he liked the battle so much. He believed in that. Yeah, unfortunately, he sacrificed in 1981.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear about your loss. You were 14. You went to Zambia as part of, a large crew. Mm-hmm. I think that was also around the same time the likes of Doreen Siokadem, etc., were leaving the country. Talk to us about your first encounter with Sam Nujoma. You heard these myths about this man, this powerful man. Talk to us about your first meeting, your first time that you met him.
Yeah, the first time I met him in Oshatotwa, in a military training camp. In a training camp where, we used to be given an orientation and training before we were deployed to the front line. Yeah. So he came to see us there after a number of groups arrived, and he made sure that we all had the opportunity to shake him, so that to dismiss this myth that we heard about him as somebody who was not human, mystical, not physical, who can disappear into thin air. Yeah. So we confirmed that he was indeed real. He spoke to us. Yeah. And he encouraged us to take up arms and to fight the enemy so as to liberate the country.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
People often speak so fondly about these meetings, these visits by the founding president to the different camps, whether it's Nyango in Angola, and the impression that he would always leave, the inspiration, the motivation that once Sam Nujoma has visited, that camp, the spirit, the fire burning within the soldiers, within Namibians there. Talk to us about what that meant for you, that visit, these words of encouragement by the founding president.
Yeah. Actually, the visits, he encouraged us not to waver, not to give up, to have a determination and integrity, you see. And the second encounter was actually at the front line. One of the camps where the first women who participated in the War of Liberation were housed. I was lucky to be one of them. Okay? The camp was named Kaunga Mashi.
Kaunga, okay.
It was a group of about 50 ladies who first participated in the War of Liberation physically at the front line, alongside their male comrades.
Yes.
And after we had carried out the first battle with the women, Dr. Nujoma came to see us. So when he came, he brought us a radio. He came to to congratulate us for the job well done.
Nice.
Because that battle, we used one of the most sophisticated weapons of the time, which is the Grand P. And we hit a number of camps surrounding the main commanding camp of the South African Defense Forces.
Yes.
And there was no response. We came back without a scratch.
Wow.
Now that's when we came to gather to converge, to meet, and to be housed at Kaungamashi. So Dr. Nujoma came to thank us, to congratulate us for the job well done, and he brought us a radio so that we can keep ourselves.
Voice of Namibia and keep abreast of what's happening in the country.
Yes. So that is a testimony of how he wanted people to be informed with the current affairs. Yeah, and also to educate themselves of what is happening elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Talking about education, the founding president was very big on that. Obviously, we know that Namibia's struggle for independence had a three-pronged approach. The political mobilization on the diplomatic front, and then, of course, on the battle front. But in the meantime, something very important was happening. We were sending a number of people to Germany, to the UK, to Cuba, etc., Nigeria, all over the world. And something very important was happening, because apart from liberating the country, we needed to have a skilled and abled workforce, leadership, etc., that could take this country forward.
Yes.
Talk to us about that time when many of you were being sent to different parts of the globe to go and pursue education, and your personal story, yes.
Yeah, I was again lucky to be part of a group of 50 students, some who came from the front where I was stationed at that time. Others came from the training camp of Oshatotwa. Others from the old farm.
Nyango,
Nyango was not yet. It wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Yes. It was not yet established. It was established maybe in 1976.
I think, yes.
Yeah. So we got this opportunity. When we left the front line, we didn't actually know where we were going, so we weren't excited so much yet. We knew we were going on a mission. And then we were taken to the old farm. Okay, that's when we were informed. Now when we are taking pictures so that we get our first passports ever in life, you get excited. Yeah, we were informed you are going to school. You are going to further your studies now. You have participated in the military aspect of the liberation struggle. Now you are going to study. So we went to Nigeria under the escort of the late Nangolo, Miss McGovern, and someone Nangolo who was a journalist.
Okay, yeah. How old were you at the time, ma'am?
I was 15 years old.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. But you see, when we were there, when we entered Zambia, we were told the younger ones we go to the old farm. The older ones, if you are 18 years and above, you can go to the front if you so wished. We all, forged our ages to make it more because we were so curious and we were so eager. We wanted to participate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So, yes.
Fantastic. Take us through your educational journey briefly. You were in Nigeria. You went to the UK as well, yes?
Yes. From my university.
Yes, and in the studies that you pursued, yes?
Yeah. In Nigeria, I studied in Form 2, secondary school. Yeah, because that is where I ended. When I left Namibia, I was also in Form 2 at Ongwediva Training College.
Yes.
And our medium of instruction at Ongwediva College was Afrikaans, So I was very fluent in Afrikaans, but I know nothing, almost nothing in English, except the language. We had English as a subject, and I did pass. I did pass English, but I wasn't fluent. I couldn't communicate. So Nigeria brought English to us. So in class and when I was studying, I actually had to translate from English to Afrikaans before I could understand it properly. Yes. So, but the difference now between the education we are getting in Nigeria and the education
what
that
you were used to here back home at the time.
People used to specialize very early during their studies. In Form 2 at Ongwediva, for example, there are already different streams of education. Some studied tech handle and book hold. I think those are the ones that were aiming to pursue commercial subjects. I was science inclined, so I was in the mathematics class. Then there were other languages. There was languages. So there were 4 streams.
Fantastic. And was that a bit of a culture shock to you, an educational shock as well? I mean, you're in this massive country, one of the biggest country on the African continent. It's been like that for some time now. You have over so many languages, the cultural diversity, all of that. What was it, climatizing like in both Nigeria and in Europe, where you ended up here?
Yeah, the cultural diversity is there. Starting from even, the way the people relate themselves, the way the food that we eat, and the routines that we went through. You see, in Nigeria, we were exposed to we were kept in a much controlled environment. Whereas in Namibia, we were sort of just left to roam and to control ourselves. There was no control as such. In our school, for example, we were not allowed to move out as we like. We only had to move out if we went to go to town for whatever provisions or anything. We had to be escorted by our matron and wearing our school uniforms in a line. Whereas it was very strict, and also the activities at school, within the school, we had to, if you are assigned, we are divided into hostels, and each hostel was to take up an activity, whether it is games, if you are participating in games during this day, the whole house has to do that. If it's for library studies, you have to do that. And also our subjects, our studies. In Nigeria, it was broad-based. We didn't specialize at a younger age. We were exposed to both commercial and science-based, so we had a very strong background. Although we are not specialists, we are not experts in
general knowledge.
Yes, we do have that general knowledge.
Of course, fast forward to an independent Namibia, you returned as well to, of course, participating in the 1989 elections. Just talk to us about, and in your concluding sentiments as well, post-independent Namibia, the vision that the founding president had, everybody coming back, from the different places where they went to study, etc., and how you saw firsthand, all of these pieces sort of assemble and, complete what is Namibia today. Just talk to us about that and, of course, the vision that the founding president always had for this country.
Yeah, the vision, The conditions have so much changed. Because I came back for elections in 1989. I had to go home to my parents in the villages. Water alone was a problem, a big problem. We had to participate. We had to dig wells to get water from underground. You see, we had to wake up early, 4 o'clock, to go and dig those wells, including myself. We have to carry the shower, to get. But now it is taps running everywhere, so that is a big difference. The roads,
a long way.
So that I much appreciate. We could go for days without bathing, but today the tap is there. The tap is there. If you can't bring it at home, it's still there. You can go and fetch clean water.
Absolutely.
And I look at schools. Almost all schools have up to grade 12. Yeah, combined schools. Whereas during our time, I had, at the age of 10, I had to walk more than 10 kilometers to go to school. You know, wake up 6 o'clock on the road, and by the time I come back, it is sunset. You see, you sleep for how many hours? But now, there are schools everywhere.
Absolutely.
Even next door to where I lived, there is a school, which is a combined school up to grade 10. Yeah.
Come a very long way.
Yes. So those are the differences. The education and all these schools are actually managed by well-qualified personnel. Very well-qualified personnel.
Just lastly, how can we uphold the legacy of Dr. Nujoma?
If I had my way, I would establish more education institutions, because that was his passion from, you know, when I observed, you know, a bit from a distance. Yeah, that was his passion, especially in science fields, in geology in particular, in medical sciences. He wanted people to be trained in as doctors, as engineers. So I would advise, if I had my way, I would advise the Minister of Education to continue allocating a big chunk of the budget to that.
Very much.
Okay? But in addition to that, we have a center which is called Sanomark in Hentis Bay, named after Sam Nujoma Marine Research Center, Sanomark. I would upgrade it to a fully fledged university. Yeah, so that it can house mostly science subjects, but depending on the demand, we can house more. We can put in more programs so that, you know, his vision will be realized. And also when it comes to industrialization, we should develop and more science-based industries.
Absolutely.
Because in Namibia, our science, you know, industries for research and technologies are limited. Whereas, the art subjects, they can practice almost everything they want here.
Very much.
Yeah.
That's how we can uphold the legacy of our President, Dr. Sam Nujoma. Thank you so much for being with us here, Dr. Shikongo Nambabi. We certainly appreciate you. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you for your contributions to the Namibia we know today, and we wish you all the best here.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you for having me.
They have it, of course, Dr. Martha Shikongo Nambabi, of course, someone who was in exile as well, who formed part of those many Namibians who were sent out to get an education in order to come back and, of course, build this nation as we know it today. Just reflecting on her time in exile, on her encounters with founding President Dr. Sam Nujoma, and, of course, his legacy and how we can uphold that legacy. Do stay with us. We continue right here.
I remember the day when he came back from exile, how he came down the aeroplane and kissed the Namibian soil. I am pleased. Family members of Dr. Sam Nujoma, may the Lord save and brave you. We need you. We are standing behind him because he was for all, not anyone separate, but for the whole Namibia. I am pleased God gave us a man like him.
He must be very strong.
I would like to express my condolences to the Nujoma family for the passing on of our first president, His Excellency Dr. Sam Nujoma. We pray that his soul has gone to rest, eternal rest, and we wish the family well. We pray for them that the Lord will comfort them and keep them during this tough time, and they should know that we are all together as a nation. We are mourning and we are terrified of this news, and we are grateful of what he has done for us as Namibia.
I would just like to send my condolences to the Nujoma family. Truly, Sam Nujoma is somebody who has fought for our liberation, and it's part of the reason why our country is independent today, till this day. So he has done impeccable things for our country, and it only keeps elevating because he decided to take the first step. So we will always hold him dear to our hearts. He will not be resting, in as much as he'll be resting in peace, he will also be resting in power.
I just want to send my condolences to our first president, the founding father, to his family, Dr. Sam Nujoma. So I just want to leave some scriptures that may God be with him, and the Lord is their light and their salvation, according to the book of Psalms 27. So they should not fear, because the Lord is with them. Though our grandfather, our father, our guardian has left, we have courage. Our courage is in God. So we should just hope in God.
So much for staying with us. We continue with our coverage, of course, leading up to the burial of founding President Dr. Sam Shafishuna Nujoma on the 1st of March 2025, engaging various pockets of society on his legacy and contributions to this country. We shift our focus to the diplomatic community. Of course, we continue to engage them as far as his contributions, as far as international relations is concerned. To Namibia now. Ambassador Hinyangerwa Asheke represented Namibia in the United States of America following the country's independence in 1990. The country had to establish its presence on the international stage, particularly in key diplomatic regions such as the U.S. As the Namibian ambassador to the United States in the early years of Namibia's independence, Ambassador Asheke was tasked with several critical diplomatic and representational duties. Ambassador Asheke now joins us to reflect on his tenure in the U.S. under the leadership of founding President Dr. Sam Shafishuna Nujoma. Very good morning to you, Ambassador, and thank you so much for joining us here on this special program.
Good morning, and thank you.
We appreciate it. First and foremost, Ambassador, what did you make of the news of the passing of founding President Dr. Sam Shafishuna Nujoma?
Well, it was tragic news indeed. And every time when this subject comes up, you feel really deeply touched by the passing of this great man, this champion of freedom and peace in our country. And well, here, let me make use of this opportunity to express again our condolences to Meme Ovambo, to Honorable Tony Nujoma, and the whole family on this sad loss, the tragic loss indeed. And yes, it has touched so many of us who have had an opportunity to work with him.
What are your fondest memories of founding President, Ambassador?
Memories?
First memories and first encounters with the late founding president.
Yeah, well, yes, indeed. Let me say, I met him for the first time. I have heard of him for so many years when I was growing up, but at the end of it, we met finally in Zambia during my time in Exile. That was in 1977, and since then we have worked together for so many years. At the time, I was at the United Nations Institute for Namibia, but also at the front preparing for participating in our liberation struggle, like many other comrades of SWAPO. So it's a long story of admiration of a man who was so principled, who was truly a champion and of freedom, not only for Namibia, but actually for Africa as a whole, and an icon in the context of, and a statesman indeed, who has done so much for our country and for our continent.
Much indeed. Of course, Ambassador, you also have a very interesting story of how you ended up representing Namibia in countries like the US. As a matter of fact, an accredited panel agreed to appoint you as charge d'affaires of Namibia to the US on an exceptional basis, given that you were residing in New York at the time and you were seeking accreditation as an ambassador. But talk to us about this period and also founding President Nujoma's outlook and approach to diplomacy and international relations here.
Yes, so let me say the background to my being in New York. It was actually because I was serving as the only representative of SWAPO at the United Nations at our independence, because everybody during the transition, everybody, including my leaders, the late Comrade Theo Gurira before, and then Helmut Angula, they all went for different assignments. So I stayed in New York in charge of the SWAPO mission. So I was there until the independence. And on the basis of that, I was given that task of representing an independent Namibia. It was an honor indeed for me, and a challenge, but a pleasure serving an independent Namibia after so many years of a struggle for freedom and independence. Now, the exceptional basis was basically that I was there in the office of SWAPO. That obviously had to be transformed to the office of the mission of Namibia. And this was not only in the U.S., it was also at the United Nations. The mission was called Permanent Observer Mission of Namibia to the United Nations. But I was also at the same time representative of Namibia in Washington. So the government decided to give me the assignment of opening both the mission to the UN and the embassy in Washington. In that category of being, in fact, I was ambassador chargé d'affaires at the United Nations and the minister in Washington, and that was in line with the policies of institutions in order to be functional.
The task you had there at that point in time, that was it 1991, yes?
Excuse me?
Was that in 1991, Ambassador?
Yeah, yes.
Talk to us about how daunting a task that was. You know, here you were setting up a foreign mission in one of the biggest countries in the world, the United States. I believe President George H.W. Bush, father of George W. Bush, was president at that point in time. Talk to us about, how daunting a task it was.
Hello, can you ask that question again?
Ambassador, can you hear me?
Yeah, just hold on.
All right, am I audible now, Ambassador?
Hello, yes.
Yes, Ambassador, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was mentioning, at the time it was the early 90s, just after the turn of independence. I believe it was 91. Talk to us about how daunting a task this was for you, to set up this new mission in the U.S. I believe President George H.W. Bush was president at that point, yes?
Yes, yes, indeed. And one of the things that happened, during this struggle, SWAPO was called all kinds of names. Even our president was called all kinds of names. And so I recall President Nujoma visiting the State House, White House in Washington, and having a private discussion with President Bush. Bush looked at Nujoma and says, "You must be something. we have been. I think I have been told the lies about you. You looking at how you handled the process towards independence. I cannot but admire you, and I wish to encourage you to continue and to wish you all the best for your new nation. I recall that. Now, in terms of the establishment of the diplomatic relations were established between the United States and Namibia and the United States were established right on the Independence Day. And so what we needed to do was to formalize things in terms of functionality again, to establish the embassy and in Washington. We were also, in the meantime, I was responsible for establishing the mission of an independent Namibia to the United Nations. This included the procurement of buildings for both purposes, and discussing various issues relating to our country and how we intend to cooperate. Now, the guiding principle here, for our relations with other countries, including the United States, the United Nations as an institution, it is our foreign policy foreign policy and diplomacy management. That was a document that was also guided by the Constitution of the Republic of Namibia by Article 96. So that was how we proceeded to establish bilateral relations, not only in Washington, but mind you, I was also an ambassador in Ethiopia and an ambassador to Germany.
Help us understand, and I'm not going to say Namibia's foreign policy outlook, but I'm going to say Dr. Sam Nujoma's foreign policy outlook. Let's go back to the Nujoma administration and what that outlook looked like, as far as Namibia's foreign policy is concerned.
No, Dr. Sam Nujoma was, in the first place, coming from the liberation struggle that he headed for many years. He was concerned about peace and security for obviously for Namibia, and also about the policy of non-alignment that he pursued so many years with other members of that movement. And the relations with our neighbors in the SADC region, also the African continent, at the time the Organization of African Unity, and so on, these various institutions that he valued very much. Then he wanted Namibia to be an active participant of these international institutions in order to promote the well-being of humankind.
And we often heard, the late Dr. Gengob also speak about how Namibia is a product of international solidarity, of course, midwifed by the United Nations, where you continue to do the work as well, while setting up, the shop for our mission there. Talk to us about how those relations from the Exile years, those relations with the UN, whether you look at UN, etc., you look at the work that you were doing there alongside Theo Ben Guriarabdem, etc., Hage Gengobdem, etc. Talk to us about how those relations on a UN level translated to relations on a US level between Namibia and the US here.
Yeah, the background was that Namibia was under colonial occupation, illegal occupation of South Africa, apartheid Africa. When we got our independence, you may recall that it was the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Dr. De Quella, who came actually to hand over, as it were, Namibia's reins to Comrade Dr. Sam Nujoma. on the 21st of March. So that explains the background to which obviously the reference comes in terms of Namibia being a product of the international community. And so we have maintained relations with the United Nations. The United Nations at one point created an office, an institution called UN Council for Namibia, which has various members, and SWAPO was always represented in meetings of that body. And then we had the UN Commissioner for Namibia, the office which was, they had an office in Zambia, Lusaka. So there was this cooperation, a very, very strong cooperation between until the time that Namibia finally became independent. But we also then, after our independence, continued to have excellent relations between us and the United Nations.
What would you remember as Dr. Nujoma's lasting legacy, especially on the international relations and diplomatic front?
Say that again?
What would you highlight or underscore as Dr. Nujoma's lasting legacy as far as international relations and diplomacy is concerned?
First, let me say, Dr. Nujoma was a unique personality, a very knowledgeable person. He was a historian in his own right, and he contributed so much to the struggle for the liberation of Namibia, and then he also very much engaged in promoting not only Namibia's independence but the freedom of Africa as a whole, and the cooperation between the nations of Africa within the context of SADC, the context of the OAU at the time, and then within the non-aligned movement. These are all fora where President Nujoma made his tremendous contribution that will be part of his legacy for Namibia, for Africa, and for the whole. He was a statesman, let me say that. His statements, he was recognized by even those that did not necessarily like him, but they recognized him as a force. He had a presence that was admired by so many, including those that not necessarily supported our struggle during the struggle for the liberation of Namibia.
Ambassador, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to us and share your stories, your encounters, your reflections of the late founding president, Dr. Sam Nujoma. We certainly appreciate it and we wish you all the best here.
Thank you very much.
There you have it. Ambassador Hinyangerwa Sheke, he is the former UN representative, deputy representative of SWAPO at the United Nations. That was between 1981 and 1992. He, of course, also set up shop as far as Namibia's mission is concerned in the U.S., in Washington. He, of course, was key in that, just reflecting on the role that founding president Dr. Sam Nujoma played in, of course, the international front diplomacy, if you will, for Namibia, whereas also Ambassador Sheke also served as ambassador to Ethiopia between 1992 to 1997. He was in Egypt in 2002, and then, of course, his last posting was in Germany between 1997 and 2002. We continue with more engagements here as we continue to pay homage to the legacy of our founding president, that's Dr. Sam Nujoma. To stay with us.
We want to say, send our sincere condolences to the Nujoma family and the whole of Namibia. So let's stay strong and rest in peace, our father.
The family must be strong. We lose a hero, our great father. We say rest in peace in the name of Jesus. Amen.
It's really sad to lose such a humble and inspirational person like him. It's really sad.
I would like to give my condolences to the family members and friends of the founding father of Namibia.
I'm sorry for our Namibian nation to lose our founding father. May God be with you guys, and I know all is gonna be well once again.
They must be strong, even in this situation. Even us, we are not happy. We really lost the pink man, the pink star in the earth, on the earth. So, what we want to say here, he must rest in peace.
It's a great loss for the nation of Namibia. We are in deep loss. Everyone is feeling bad. It's terrible. When the news hit, my heart skipped a beat. And it just felt like we as a nation lost a great treasure. The late President Sam Nujoma was a great hero. He was a symbol of peace. He was a symbol of courage. He was everything that Namibia needed to go through the liberation struggle. And for that, we are forever grateful. His legacy will live on.
My deepest condolences to the Nujoma family as we are mourning our founding father, our founding president, and our prayers and thoughts are with them, with the whole family. So
our condolences to the family, friends, and the wife of Dr. Sam Nujoma to place peace through this tough time, and we keep them in our prayers.
Their public opinions, of course, is voicing their views on the loss of that is founding President Dr. Sam Shafishuna Nujoma. We continue to speak to the international relations community, that of Namibia, on the legacy of founding President Dr. Sam Nujoma. And Ambassador Nikki Nashandi was the first to open the mission in Stockholm, Sweden in 1990, where he was appointed to his next mission in Moscow, Russia, between 1991 to 1999, with an urgent and critical task of diplomatic and representational duties. He then proceeded to Brazil in 2003 to open a mission in Brasilia under the tenure of the late founding president, Dr. Sam Nujoma. We now have the pleasure of welcoming Ambassador Nikki Nashandi, joining us, that is via telephone, former ambassador to Libya and the last ambassador to serve under the Soviet Union. Very good day to you, Ambassador Nashandi, and thank you for joining us here on this special program. Ambassador Nashandi? All right, it appears that we are experiencing a bit of technical issues. We'll try and reconnect there with Ambassador Nikki Nashandi, of course, to gauge his views, his reflections on the legacy of founding President Dr. Sam Shafishuna Nujoma. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. We've just been informed that we've been able to establish connectivity with that Ambassador Nashandi. Ambassador Nikki Nashandi, a very good day to you and welcome to this special tribute show as we continue to pay homage to that is the late founding president, Dr. Sam Shafishuna Nujoma.
Good afternoon, and I'm happy to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. First and foremost, what was your initial reaction when you received the news of the passing of the founding president?
Well, of course, I think I was one of the luckiest person because the president used to be my neighbor. His farm, Etunda, is not far away from my own farm. Every time he's there, he will call me or I will call him. Then we'll go and discuss. But the later days, I realized that he was not feeling very well. Obviously, as a human being, when one gets old, obviously the only chance is for one to depart. Of course, I was shocked, although, of course, it is a natural, expectation.
Your fondest memories of founding President Nujoma, what was your first encounter with the late founding president again?
Well, I met the founding president for the first time, to be exact. That was on the 26th of August 1974. That was during the 8th anniversary of the Ovamboland battle. He came to address us at the old farm in Lusaka, and obviously after he addressed us, possibly maybe a week or so, we were selected to go for a military training to the Soviet Union by that time.
And what did you make of this man at that point in time?
Well, you see, we only used to hear about him, but once you have seen him, then you put together A and B about the image you used to have, and when you are seeing the person for the first time.
Absolutely. Of course, fast forward, Ambassador, you were amongst a couple of ambassadors, of course, tasked with establishing a number of diplomatic missions, a number of diplomatic relationships with other countries. At the very onset, of independence, that was one of Namibia's more immediate tasks. Take us back to that time and how daunting a task this was here.
It's correct. I think some of us were much more fortunate because even before the independence of Namibia, personally, I served as a SWAPO chief representative to Libya and North Africa. So in Libya, we were having what they call a diplomatic status. And after Namibia's independence, obviously went through a diplomatic, a training through an able Ghanaian diplomat, Ambassador Deborah. So from there, I was given a responsibility to go and open our mission in Stockholm. It was not so easy because I was given funds to buy for the country's properties, that is the embassy, as well as the house of the ambassador. Unfortunately, during that time, the economic situation was not so good. The dollar plummeted, and obviously, I found myself that the money was not enough. So I have to do the explanation, but obviously it could be they could agree that it was not my personal fault. Obviously, the properties I bought for the government were excellent because up to now, the chancery and the residence of the ambassador, they are still intact, and the resident ambassador is still using it.
And of course, from there, you went on to establish the next mission in Russia, in Moscow, to be exact, where you, of course, also served between 1991 to 1999. Take us back to that period once more.
It's correct, because I presented my credentials to President Gorbachev. That was in October 1991. Unfortunately, in December of that year, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. That's why up to now, I call myself the first and the last Namibian ambassador to the Soviet Union. It was not a very easy thing. After I've done my military training in the Soviet Union, when it used to consist of 15 republics, now they broke out. So you found that every republic was now on its own. The Russian Federation, which was the largest, I found myself there. And the economic situation was so bad. That's why I always tell people that during that time, you buy what you find, but not what you want.
What was the general, in your engagements, in your work in setting up, these missions, especially in countries such as Russia, for instance, in the early 90s, I can imagine, what was the general perception of the international community of Nujoma? I'm sure by then, much of the international community had known Nujoma. Of course, he had a number of engagements during the struggle, during the exile years, pardon me. Talk to us about the perception that the international community had of Dr. Nujoma and just generally what they made of him.
Well, of course, apart from the Russian Federation and other neighboring countries, which used to form the also, say, the Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, etc., Nujoma had a very high regard in those countries because it's where we used to send our students for political orientation. For instance, in Moscow itself, they used to have something they called a party school, of which many of our cadres were sent there for political orientation. I remember when we were doing our military training there, the President-elect Comet Netumbo, she was also undergoing the party school during that time. Many diplomats, even in Moscow at that time, when they come to our mission, obviously, when they see the portrait of Nujoma, they consider that man being a freedom fighter. So we had quite a very good relationship with those countries.
Ambassador Nashandi, in your view, what do you think is the founding president, Dr. Nujoma's lasting legacy in the space of international relations and diplomacy?
Well, I can tell you, for instance, when I left Moscow in March 1990, because before that I have to go and pay farewell to my colleagues as ambassadors. I remember paying a courteous call to the ambassador of Yugoslavia at that time. He was His Excellency Mirosevic, the brother to the then President of Yugoslavia. He promised to come and see me at the airport if the Americans did not bomb Baghdad. Unfortunately, Baghdad was bombed and he never came to see me at the airport. So thereafter, obviously, I went back home. And during that time, of course, I continued with my work at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we continue to have such a very good relationship with all those countries.
Ambassador Nashandi, just in closing, as a family mourns, as a nation mourns, as a continent mourns, and as the globe mourns, what is your message to, of course, everyone out there as far as the legacy of founding President Dr. Sam Shafishuna Nujoma?
Perhaps to start with, because I've stayed for over 12 years in Libya, and President Nujoma knew about that. Every time we meet, he has to address me in Arabic. He will always say, Comrade Ambassador, cool quest? Then obviously I will answer that cool quest, meaning is everything okay? Of course, before I conclude, I just want to offer my condolences to the founding First Lady, Madam Ovamboland, Comrade Tony Nujoma, who used to be my schoolmate, and obviously we'll be together in exile. But to the Namibian people, we should have that courage and follow the footsteps the founding president has left for us.
Shandi, thank you so much for joining us here, and we wish you all the best. Thank you for sharing your story with us here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
There you have it. Ambassador Nikki Nashandi, he, of course, seasoned diplomat, having served in a number of posts from the onset of Namibia's independence. In 1990, he set up Namibia's mission in Stockholm, Sweden, and of course continued to Moscow, Russia, where he served as ambassador from 1991 to 1999. Of course, also jokingly calling himself the first and last ambassador to the Soviet Union following its dissolution in 1991. Now, he of course further served in Brazil as well, and also opened shop in Brazil. That's in 2003. All of this under the tenure of the late founding president, Dr. Nujoma, saying that his leadership qualities resonated with the world, and that made it easier for Namibia, of course, to resonate with the world as well. To stay with us, we continue right here. Thank you for staying with us. You're tuned into this special tribute program as we continue to pay homage to, that is, the founding president and father of the Namibian nation, Dr. Sam Shafi Shuna Nujoma. Of course, we're gauging, that is, the international community this morning, Namibia's international community, former diplomats who, of course, served during the time of Dr. Nujoma, during the 15-year reign of Dr. Nujoma between 1990 and 2005. Now, Ambassador George Liswaniso went for his first foreign mission as the first secretary in New York from 1991 to 1994. And then from 97 to 98, he was appointed to work in Austria, as well as in Ethiopia in 2000 to 2006, where he was tasked with critical diplomatic responsibilities. Now, Ambassador Liswaniso joins us to talk and reflect on his reign under the leadership of founding president Dr. Sam Nujoma. Ambassador Liswaniso, a very good day to you, and thank you for joining us on this special tribute program.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate to have me on the program. Thank you.
Much appreciated, Ambassador. Firstly, how did you receive the news of the passing of founding president Dr. Sam Nujoma, and what did you make of this news?
Well, it was sad and very devastating, considering what Comrade Sam Nujoma has done for the country. But at the same time, this is death, which we have no control of it. What is left with us is to celebrate the life of an icon. Namibia settlement program was negotiated by Comrade Sam Nujoma, an intense one with the Western powers. Comrade Sam Nujoma made sure that within these negotiations, he gets a deal
which is good for the Namibians. And he did, with a protracted discussion, political, militarily, against the South Africans and other Western countries which did not want us to get independence. Finally, the president liberated Namibia inch by inch, north to south, west to east. And there was a question of Walvis Bay. He fought very hard that Walvis Bay, while we are adopting this resolution 435, it should be included in. And later, it was integrated. The founding father was believed in the defense of the Namibian territorial integrity. And he did. You remember there was a rebellion in the Eastern Caprivi, of which he fought tooth and nail. So what we could do now is to celebrate this life. The leader who has brought us freedom and human rights.
Ambassador, what was your first... Yeah, please go ahead, Ambassador. Go ahead, yes.
Yes. What we could do now, and I appreciate that the founding fathers' body has been decided to go into regions. This is a very good gesture to the people because Comrade Sam Nujoma and his soldiers lived among the people. They operated from among the people. I know this from the Zambezi region as well as in other parts of the country. So it was a very good gesture from the government to accord this to the rural people, not only in the Zambezi region, but the whole country. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ambassador. Ambassador, let's go back to your first encounter with the founding president. Take us back to that time and what you made of the man, Sam Nujoma.
I joined SWAPO in 1975 in Lusaka. Trained in Oshatotwa military camp, and I was taken to continue my education in Sierra Leone, as well as my master's degree in Moscow. In Moscow, that is where I first encounter with him when he visited Moscow. That time, our chief representative was the Minister of Health and Social Services, currently Dr. Kalombi Shangula. And he called me to sit. Come here, come and sit here. Yes, I was afraid. I was meeting him for the first time after all these years. What his message, as always, to students was study very hard. Study very hard, hard work, discipline, honest. Those were the words he was instilling in us. But when he talks to you, you feel the inspiration of somebody motivating you not to lose hope. And I can tell you, we were so happy, some of us. And later on, I met him during the 1989 general elections, as I was a deputy to Comrade Brian Smatter, who was deputizing Comrade Kapero Kabajani. He came for a star rally prior to the general elections. And he informed us under no circumstances that these sellouts will win. Never. And you know, the Zambezi region, that time Caprivi, was one of the hot spots in terms of the Kufut, who were terrorizing that area. But he assured us that it will not come on the silver plate. We are going to win, whatever the cost. And we did. Of course, in the Zambezi region, we lost to DTA. But then, generally, we won. When we established ourselves, as far as I can't remember who was SWAPO governor. I think it was Mr. Svalata. Up to today, we are in control of that region as SWAPO. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. But just to go back to your educational days and the days of Moscow where you met the founding president, what inspired you to pursue international relations here?
Well, I wanted to do international law because when you are admitted, almost the whole year you will study the Russian language, and in between here you make up your mind. And I chose international law. I was interested in order in order for the nations to stick the rules of international law and their obligations, because as you can see, things are not going well internationally, but we have to stick to the international law and its obligation, and foster respect for international law, and also to solve disputes by peaceful means. As I grew at that time under these wars from my own country, Namibia, to where I was studying. So I thought it was nice to equip myself with the international law. And indeed, when we came back home in 1989, the second group of Comrade Hage Genko, I attended the first diplomatic training group, which I benefited very much from our experienced chief representatives. Through my master's degree in international law, I was sent to New York, covering the Sixth Committee of the General Assembly that deals with legal issues.
Ambassador, of course, just looking at, as we conclude this conversation, just looking at the overall foreign policy direction, the overall international relations outlook under the tenure of founding President Dr. Sam Nujoma, what do you make of it and how do you reflect on it today?
Comrade Sam Nujoma was a principled man in terms of honest, in terms of hardworking, in terms of working within the rules, abiding to the rules of Namibia as well as the Vienna Conventions on Diplomatic Relations and Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. He was abiding one. We have, under our Foreign Service Regulation, Article 19, that is Article 96, that is a guiding principle for our foreign diplomats. Non-aligned, respect, mutual cooperation, and he, as I listened to him in New York, he was particularly interested in solving disputes amicable. And when he speaks, you see the direction. You see the direction of a leader. First of all, never mind we were just independent, but he was critical in defense of the people of Western Sahara, in defense of the Palestinian people, in defense of the Cubans with regard to the U.S. embargo against that country. He was particularly very tough on the lifting of sanctions against Zimbabwe, against Libya. And as one who was on the team of the United Nations Security Council, with my file, which I was given by my ambassador to follow Libya, at the end of the day, before I was appointed to Ethiopia, that country, it was progressing. It was progressing on a mouse, because the president fought very hard for the lifting of these sanctions. I will also tell you that there is one important thing: unity. And when I was ambassador in Ethiopia, permanent representative to the African Union, OAU African Union, and the ECA, the founding father proposed in terms of unity, in terms of popularizing the African Union. He proposed the singing, playing of the OAU anthem and hoisting of the OAU flag during official ceremonies in member states.
Ambassador Liswaniso, thank you so much. We are unfortunately pressed for time, but we appreciate you sharing your experiences, reflecting on the legacy of founding President Dr. Nujoma. Thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you.
We have it, Ambassador George Liswaniso, of course, former ambassador to New York, first secretary to New York between 91 and 94, and then, of course, served in Austria as well between 97 and 98, as well as in Ethiopia between 2000 and 2006, just outlining the legacy of founding President Dr. Sam Nujoma, his contributions to Namibia's foreign policy outlook, as well as the overall international relations of the country. Do stay with us. We have one more interview coming your way before we break for the 1 o'clock newscast.
Well, thank you very much, Nishishi, for that interview with George Lisoniso, former ambassador. They're just, of course, reflecting on the relationship with the late founding father of the Republic of Namibia. Well, we continue, of course. We've had and focused over the last 2 days on speaking to some of our very, very seasoned career diplomats, those that have, of course, been in some of the multilateral organizations representing Namibia before independence and, of course, after independence, that have started the foreign service, as well as at the same time being some of the first diplomats that are put out by the founding father. Thank you very much, of course, Adisisha, also for closing off the chat earlier on. We'll continue with our coverage for the rest of the day. In the afternoon, another team will take over that will be with you until 6 this evening. And I'll be back bright and early tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock once again as we focus on the relationship that the founding father had with the private business community. Remember, immediately after independence, of course, there was this huge task of creating or making Namibia a conducive environment for foreign direct investment. How did the president approach that? What were, of course, some of the main tenets and principles around making sure that there is an ease of doing business in the country? Protection of private property, which is guaranteed, of course, in the Constitution, and how that, along with secure tenure for private property owners here in the country, has ensured that we are a destination for foreign direct investment. That and much more we'll discuss in tomorrow's edition of this special broadcast. From me, Ricardo Glagosep, and the rest of the crew here in Studio 2, it's bye-bye.